I did file for child support whenever Troy had told me that he has been able to buy a new motorcycle, a new car.
How is it fair to Mr. Bogner that he continues to have less time with his son because you moved to another state? This is an objection to the referee's recommended order filed by Mr. Bogner. Mr. Bogner, would you go ahead and state on the record what your objection is to the referee's order?
Yes, Your Honor. My objection was to the amount of child support due to the circumstances of where we're located and stuff. I believe the child support recommendation was $887 a month. Um, Emily Berry and I, she lives in Kentucky and I live in Michigan. I originally allowed her to move when we first kind of had the child. I think he was just under a year old, to the state of Kentucky under the stance of not having child support, knowing that we wouldn't, I mean, we're both young, knowing that we wouldn't be able to afford to, both of us alone, to be able to pay for the child each way. So we agreed to on if when we each had the child, we'd pay for the child itself. I have no problem paying child support whatsoever. I want to support my son. My son's is my best friend. The only thing I object to it though is he lives 1,600 miles away from me, and I only get him a week. It costs me about almost $400, almost $500 every month just to drive to get him. That's not alone take care of him too. I know it doesn't matter exactly, but I am just asking that the court hopefully maybe lower the amount just a little bit so I can still financially be able to see my son, because once this court order goes in, I will not be able to afford to see my kid. And then another thing that I was curious on, though, is a question. When I filed my, like, how much they acquire, like, see how much I make a month and stuff, whatnot, on the paperwork, it said commission wise, and I put a number for commission. I don't make that every paycheck. That depends on how much work we have, what goes on. So I don't know if that's something that they can be reevaluated, because the amount I put, I believe, was around 300, and I do not make that extra $300 every paycheck that I receive.
And why did you put that number down there?
Because it asked for if I make commission, so I didn't want to lie and say I don't make commission, so I put my average that I received for commission on there.
That's exactly what you should have done, the
Okay.
average.
Okay, that's why I'm asking. I'm not trying
Yep.
to argue. I'm just
Yep.
curious.
No, I appreciate the question. That's a good question, but the average is sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less.
Correct.
This is what it tends to be,
Yep.
and that's all we can do is make our best guess. Just because you make $50 an hour or $25 an hour or whatever it is today doesn't mean you're going to make that tomorrow, right? Lots of
Correct.
people lose their jobs or you get sick or whatever. All we can do is say, this is what I'm doing right now. This is the general way that it works. And if something substantially different happens, we can take that into account when it happens.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So let me flip to the child support recommendation. And that is a total of $870 a month in support. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you're telling me that you get the child 1 week out of the month in Michigan, because the child's living with the mother most of the time in Kentucky, right?
Correct, sir.
All right. And you are paying the reason that mom was allowed to go to Kentucky was a stipulation that you guys entered into back in March of 23 that was then signed by the judge, which said that you were going to let mom and child go to Kentucky. But one of the factors in that was that you would not have to pay child support as a result of that. Is that correct?
Correct, sir.
All right. And so what you're telling me is in order to exercise the parenting time that you're allowed under this agreement, under this court order, is it costs you approximately $400 or $500 to go get him every month. And that's just your transportation costs?
Correct. I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to not pay anything. I 100% want to support my son. I just don't want to lose the ability not to see him. So I've tried getting a cheaper vehicle. I mean, I'm 27. I don't have a bunch of money to go spend to get a new vehicle. I drive a Jeep. It costs a lot of money in gas. I make
All
the
right,
trip
so
every single time. And then another
so
problem too is it's going to get the problem is even if I do get the chance to get him, it's going to be hard to support him because when I get him, I work all week anyways. So I only get to see my son after work. So letting alone paying to support him too while paying that all that extra money and then on top of that paying $400 to $500 to get him, it's going to be very hard for me to do. My parenting
okay.
time would be cut in half because I would have to wait an extra month to be able to afford to see my son.
All right, Mr. Bogner, as to your work schedule, that's going to be true no matter what happens. You're always going to be working. As adults, that's
Correct.
what we have to do to support ourselves. So we don't have the benefit of when our kids are young of seeing them 24 hours a day because we all have to go to work. So I
Correct.
can't help you with that. What I can maybe help you with is this transportation issue. So I want you to tell me a little bit more about the costs. You told me a general figure of 400 to 500, but it's 1,600 miles. You said you drive a Jeep. What kind of miles per gallon are you getting in your Jeep?
16 to 18 on the highway.
And that's mostly what those miles are between here and Paducah, Kentucky, right?
The 1600, we meet halfway.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a return
Yes.
trip, so it's down there and
Yes.
back.
Yep. It would take me about 14 to 16 hours of driving. I'd do it in a day. Um,
Do you stay down there at all, or do you make the round
no,
trip all in
sir.
one
I
day?
make the round trip so I can spend more time with my son and my family.
All right. So if we do 1,600 miles at 16 miles to the gallon, that's 100 gallons, right?
Yes.
Times $3 a gallon, that's $300. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. I think gas is 285 up here right now. I don't know what it is in Lima, Ohio. But even if it was 315, it'd be $315. 350 would be $350. So you're looking at about $350 at most in gas. There's
Okay.
probably a little bit of food in there. So your estimate of $400 is probably fairly accurate in my book.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Ms. Berry, do you have any information to dispute his claims of what this transportation is costing him?
Um, I don't know how it's 1,600 miles. So I drive, I believe it's like 394 on the way there and then 394 back.
Which is just under 800, right?
Yes.
Because so, Mr. Is it exactly halfway, or where do you meet at?
We originally meet in Prosperity, Indiana, but this week I had introduced a new meeting spot, so it's possibly easier and it would lower the cost a little bit for both of us. I drive like an extra hour, overall 2 hours, but I drive an extra hour, and I do that because I know she pays more for our son and everything like that. But then I recently just decided, or I made up a new meeting spot that's right off the highway, so I drive like 10 minutes longer, if that even, which I don't mind. But
All
it's
right.
around
So
the same mileage.
from
Um,
Gaylord to this new meetings place, one way, how far is it?
It's 6 hours. I live in Atlanta, Michigan, so it adds an extra hour.
All right. So from Atlanta to this place, how many miles is it?
I can tell you exactly. 1 second. I wasn't for sure exactly. Let me tell you exactly. It is 409 miles.
So 800 miles, not 1,600 miles is what you're doing.
No, 1,600 miles monthly. So Saturday I go pick him up.
Oh, pick him up and take him back down. All right. I
Yes.
understand what you're saying
Yes,
now. All
sir.
right. All right. That sounds appropriate. I mean, Ms. Berry, any other information that you have to dispute what he's telling me now?
I do. I understand where he's coming from. It is expensive to have to meet halfway. However, if you look at the form of the calculations of both of our income, he makes quite a bit more than I do, and I'm still able to afford to take care of our son plus make that trip. So again, I understand that it is a lot, but if I'm able to do it on, a much lower income, then I don't understand how he's not able to. Plus me able to take care of him, our son, the 3 weeks that I have him. Because right now, Mr. Bogner doesn't contribute to anything that our son needs on a daily basis.
Well, that is the agreement that you reached with him back in 2023, right? You agreed to go down to where you're at now with the understanding that he wouldn't have to, because you get to see your child much more than he does.
Yes, sir. That was at that time. However, a year and a half, 2 years have passed. Our son's getting older, and I want to be able to put him in sports, extracurricular things, and it's hard to do just on my income. So that's why
So,
I'm
so, so you miscalculated on how much it's going to cost you based on an agreement that isn't changing for him.
No, I didn't miscalculate. I think at the time, if I'm being honest, I let my pride get in the way and kind of felt like I could do things kind of on my own. But now the longer that I've lived here and I'm with my son every day, it just doesn't seem fair to me that I have to do all of this by myself when he's more than capable. And I will say that I did file for child support whenever Troy had told me that he has been able to buy a new motorcycle, a new car. He's able to do all of these things. And it upset me because I feel like he should be putting some of that towards his son. And that's really where I came from.
Ma'am, you made a bargain to be able to go where you wanted to go. And now you're trying to renege on it by saying, I don't think it's fair. How is it fair to Mr. Bogner that he gets less, he continues to have less time with his son because you moved to another state?
Um, can I give you a little backstory on that?
You can. I've read the file. I understand the background, but the court didn't make you make an agreement. You guys
No, yeah.
reached this agreement. And so you're asking to change the agreement on his side without changing the agreement on your side.
May I say
Is
something?
that, nope, I'm
Okay.
talking to Ms.
Okay, my bad.
Nope, you're all right. I'll give you a chance in a minute, but
Okay.
Ms. Berry, do you understand where I'm coming from?
I do, absolutely. Um, if I can say, I had moved to Michigan for 3 years because I did have a baby with Mr. Bogner. Um, and I just wanted to simply move back home to Kentucky.
I get
Kentucky's my
that.
home.
I'm not saying you made a bad decision.
Yeah,
Okay. I am not saying that. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have done what you did. But I am saying that I believe that I have to at least calculate this into the equation because you did make this bargain. Nobody
sure,
forced you to do that. You made it and the court approved it. And now
sure,
you're asking to change it. So I have to, I believe, put that into the equation. So
sure.
again, I'm not throwing stones at you. I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
saying if you're going to ask to change what the prior court order was, I need to take that into account. All right. Mr.
Sure.
Bogner, did you have something that you thought was important to say?
Yeah, I had never bought a new vehicle. I wish I could, trust me. But I did get a motorcycle, that is true. But like I said, the reasoning, I think I get where she's coming from about how can she can afford it and I can't. That's understandable. But what I'm getting at is I could afford it now, yes. But once this stipulation goes into contact, like once this child support goes into it, I won't be able to afford it then. Like I said, I'm not saying I don't want to pay anything at all. I'm just trying to get it so where I can still see my son. I just don't want to lose I've already lost so much custody of my son. I don't want to lose any more. It's not even custody. I don't want to lose time with him.
Yep. I understand what you're saying. All right. Ms. Kraus from the front of the court is here. I'm going to ask her a question that I have. And then maybe I'll make factor that into my decision as well. Ms. Kraus, I believe that the child support formula allows for deviation from the formula where it would be unjust or inappropriate. Is that correct?
Correct.
Are there any court cases or rules or policies of the friend of the court that would impact this particular set of circumstances here where we have a very high transportation cost that wasn't part of the original agreement between the parties?
The court can direct us to do anything in regards to the deviation that you feel is appropriate.
All right. It appears to me that the parties originally agreed that, and for good reason, I think Ms. Berry wanted to go back home. And I think that was a good decision that she made at that time. And I'm not going to go into all of the details of why, but I agree with her that that was a good decision. She at that time and Mr. Bogner reached an agreement whereby that would be allowed. There would be no contested hearing, that the parties agreed to that, based at least in part on an understanding that Mr. Bogner would not have to pay child support because he would be receiving much less parenting time in basically a 3-to-1 ratio. She would keep the child for 3 weeks, he would have 1 week, and they would each pay the costs of the child when the child was with them at that time. And so I believe nothing has really changed other than Ms. Berry is now understanding, and it is sometimes hard when you're young to figure out how much is this really going to cost me. So I don't fault her for saying, man, I didn't really understand or realize how much it's going to cost. I think Mr. Bogner is kind of figuring that out too, that it costs.
No, I agree.
It costs more than you really realize. It's a lot to raise a child. So I understand that. I also understand that in approximately the child is now what, 2.5 or 3? 3. So in another year and a half, there's going to be another dispute, possibly, or at least another decision have to be made. Where is the child going to stay as school becomes a priority? And so that's going to have to be figured into the mix. So whatever decision I make today is likely going to get revisited in another year and a half or 2 years at the most. So this is not a forever order. So in my view, I believe that it is appropriate to count the transportation costs that Mr. Bogner has toward the amount of child support. So the current amount that is ordered or would be ordered for child support, I believe, is $897. Let me make sure I got that dollar figure right.
It's 870, Your Honor.
870, excuse me. Thank you. I appreciate that. 870 a month. I believe that Mr. Bogner has legitimately $400 a month in transportation costs. And so I'm going to ask the friend of the court to count those payments that he makes for transportation, that $400, as child support. He needs to document his costs to the friend of the court on a regular basis, so that if they substantially change, if gas goes down to $2 a gallon, I don't think that's going to happen, but if it does, your costs are much less. So on a quarterly basis, I'm going to ask you to submit your documentation to the court, the friend of the court, indicating that how much you've been paying for that. And then that's going to be deducted. So the amount of child support ongoing to Ms. Berry would be $470 a month, which will assist her for the future. And then this can be revisited once a decision is made about where the child is going to stay full-time during the school year. Any questions about that, Mr. Bogner?
Yes, I do. In that child support, when they asked it would pay for his insurance too, does that go towards that? Because I just want to make sure that's covered for her and him, because I know it is stressful to pay that much, but I know in the original thing, the state of Kentucky had requested that I pay for child support and his insurance. So I just want to make sure.
Do you have him on your employment insurance now?
No, but they said that the last time when I talked to the referee, I believe he said that it was part of the child support. It was $200, I believe, and $1 for the insurance for him through the state to pay for it, and then the rest was just child support alone. But it was part of the thing that Kentucky came after me for.
I think you may be confusing child care with insurance. There is an amount in the that she is asking, that the state of Kentucky was talking about for child care. That is, when she goes to work, she has to have somebody watch the child. And she's saying that your portion of that would be $211 a month.
Okay, that's what that was. Okay,
that's what that is for. There's
my
another
apologies.
part. That's all right. That's a good question. There's another part of the formula that deals with if you are paying for health insurance and you get credited for a portion of that that would go to the child if you are paying for that. If you're not paying for it, it doesn't involve that. But if you do put the child on insurance so that the child is not receiving Medicaid or Medicare or public assistance in that regard, you, Mr. Bogner, or you, Ms. Berry, would get credit for that, and it would change the child support recommendation.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
You. Yes, sir.
All right. So I'm going to direct the friend of the court to implement the $400 at transportation costs as a regular part of the child support that you are paying. You are to confirm that you're paying that amount by sending in quarterly statements to the friend of the court indicating that that's the amount that you are paying, and supporting that with documentation. And then, so I'm not going to change the actual amount of child support. It is what it is as recommended, but I'm simply giving you credit for the costs that you normally wouldn't have had under the agreement. I'm count that as child support. Any questions that you have, Mr. Bogner?
Just to get it to fully understand it. So technically they will still, so will they pull the $470 or will they pull the full $870?
They're gonna, if it's gonna come from a withholding order on your check, it's gonna be $470.
Okay, and then
you're gonna show the friend of the court that you're making the other $400 payments by doing those quarterly payment statements.
Okay, and we'll receive paperwork in the mail for this, correct?
Yes, you will. Yes,
okay.
You will.
Then I'm done.
Ms.
Thank you,
Berry,
Your Honor.
Ms. Berry, any questions that you have?
No, sir.
All right, Ms. Kraus, do you have any questions for me? Because I know you're going to have to try to put this together on paper for me.
I don't believe so.
All right, thank you very much. That will be the order of the court then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.